Today we're going to be looking at Acts chapter 24 and talking about the importance of living above reproach. In other words, living a life in such a way that if any accusations come our way, that we will be able to defend ourselves based on the life that we live, or if people bring accusations against us, that others will not believe those accusations because of the life that we've lived, that we lived above reproach. And we're going to continue on with Paul's ministry, Paul's missionary journeys. And in Acts 24, he was escorted to Caesarea to face trial for some of the accusations that he faced from the Jewish people in Jerusalem. But the truth is, Paul's life and ministry was a great testament of his faithfulness to God. Even though he faced a lot of opposition in his journeys, God always used him to share the gospel to both Jews and to Gentiles. He lived out the life of a faithful servant to God. He lived above reproach before God and men. And it's important for us to do the same. And so as we look through this passage, we're going to see what Paul did, or the life that he lived, and what we can do in the same way. Because if we are followers of Christ, we are servants of God. And as servants of God, we are to live life above reproach. Because a life lived above reproach gives us that ability to overcome the challenges that may come as we serve God. And so we're going to take a quick look at Paul's life, how Paul's life helped him in this latest trial that he was in, this latest trial before men. And it is important for us to live above reproach so that we can, number one, be fearless in the face of false testimony. To be fearless in the face of false testimony. Verses 1 to 9, Acts 24. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their charges against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. "We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix, we acknowledge this with profound gratitude. But in order not to weary you further, I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect, and even tried to desecrate the temple, so we seized him. By examining him for yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him." The other Jews joined in the accusation, asserting that these things were true. So these Jews, they did not want Paul to live. They wanted him to be thrown in prison, but more than that, they wanted him dead. And when he was in Jerusalem, they tried to kill him on a couple of occasions. And they even planned to assassinate him before he had the chance to leave the city. But their plans were thwarted when Paul escaped to Caesarea by the help of the Roman guards and the Roman commander. And now that he's in Caesarea, we see that the high priest, some of the elders, and they even bring a lawyer with them to bring charges against Paul to the governor, Felix. And so when they start their accusations, their charges, they start using flattery towards the governor. Saying how wonderful he has been and the things he has done. And, we're not dumb people. What does that usually mean when people use flattery, overly flatter the other individual? Most of the time they're trying to sway him, or most of the time they are trying to get in their good graces so that they will believe in them. They were just basically buttering up the governor. And they share, so they butter him up, and then they give their charges. He says, "We have found this man to be a troublemaker." He has stirred up riots among the Jews all over the world. He's the ringleader of this Nazarene sect. In fact, he tried to desecrate the temple. And so we seized him. And then they say, well, and they didn't have the chance to try him because he escaped to Caesarea. And so they bring him before Felix, and they say, by examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him. And it says that all other Jews joined in with those accusations against Paul. Now, the problem with their accusations, though, was that none of it was true. Paul had lived a life above reproach. He did the right things. When he came to Jerusalem, he was bringing an offering to the church. He didn't stir up riots. He did not defile the temple. He didn't do any of those things. Those were just trumped up charges that these religious leaders placed upon him. But because he was a man that lived above reproach, he could stand firm and defend himself. He could hear these accusations coming at him, but they weren't going to do anything to him because he knew the life that he had lived. And the same thing happens to us as we serve the Lord. People are going to misunderstand the work that we do or the message that we bring. Many will twist our words to say what they want us to say rather than what was really said. And we see this in a lot of areas in our lives today. And the one thought that I had was, the whole abortion issue. And I just saw a little video, a discussion about this recently. They went up to somebody, and it was like I want to say it was a pro-choice rally. And the interviewer was asking, is it okay to kill a baby? And their response is, well, it's a woman's right to choose. And the interviewer turns it around and says, well, do you believe in the death penalty? But their response is, well, everyone has the right to live. So then back and forth. So babies have the right to live too? Well, no, they aren't babies until they're born. And they twist the words around to say what they want to say. And there was also another argument saying, well, babies can't care for themselves. The fetus within us, within women, they can't take care of themselves. So a woman should be able to choose whether to keep that thing or not. But then the interviewer turns it around. Well, what about those that can't care for themselves now? Because of health reasons or age, or should we kill them? Well, absolutely not. They have the right to live. And so there's these arguments and accusations that come from every direction. But the truth is, we want the best for all, but our words will get misconstrued to say we don't care about what others care about. And so accusations will come that we are against women or we are against whatever. But we need to be able to stand firm. And if we live a life above reproach, we will be able to stand firm and live fearlessly in the face of those false accusations that come against us. It's also important to live above reproach so that we can, number 2, be confident in telling the truth. Verse 10, when the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily verify that no more than 12 days ago, I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogue or anywhere else in the city. And they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law, and that is written in the prophets. And I have the same hope in God as these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and to present offerings. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple courts doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. But there are some Jews from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have anything against me. Or these who are here should state what crime they found me in when I stood before the Sanhedrin, unless it was the one thing I shouted as I stood in their presence. It is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today. And so when given the chance to share, Paul simply speaks the truth with confidence. He says he entered Jerusalem a mere 12 days prior. And that's important because at the beginning of this chapter, 5 days had passed. Well, it was 12 days ago that Paul entered Jerusalem. So 5 of those are in Caesarea. Well, probably 1 day for travel. So there he was in Jerusalem 6, 7 days. And his accusers were implying that he did all that damage, causing riots and being accused and defiling the temple and being accused of so many other things within a week. And he argues and he speaks his truth that my accusers did not find me in the temple arguing with anyone. I wasn't stirring up the crowds in the synagogue or anywhere else in the city. They cannot prove these charges they are making against me. And so he had the confidence to speak the truth that he knew that what they were trying to do was accuse him of things that never happened. And he says after an absence of several years, it would have been, I believe it was like 20-some years, Paul came back to Jerusalem to give gifts to the poor and to present his offerings. He was ceremonially clean to go into the temple. There was no crowds around him. He wasn't involved in any disturbance. And the only accusation that he could think of was when he was standing before the Sanhedrin and he shouted, as he stood in their presence, "It is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today." In Paul's defense, he was able to tell them the truth of his motivations and his actions. There was nothing deserving of being charged for any offense. And he knew that to be true. And if we are living blameless lives, if we are living lives above reproach before God and before men, we too should be able to defend ourselves by simply speaking the truth. We'll be able to tell the truth even though we are falsely accused, and there will be accusations that come against us as followers of Christ. And as we stand and we speak the truth, our words may not be accepted by the accusers, but we can know what we say is the truth. We can defend ourselves, but also know that it is God who will come to our defense. And so we can, if we live lives above reproach, we can confidently tell the truth, speak the truth of the life that we have lived. And it is important for us to live above reproach so that we can be, number 3, a strong witness for the truth. Verse 22, Then Felix, who was well acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. When Lysias, the commander, comes, he said, "I will decide your case." He ordered the centurion to keep Paul under guard, but to give him some freedom and permit his friends to take care of his needs. Several days later, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish. He sent for Paul and listened to him as he spoke about faith in Christ. As Paul talked about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and said, "That's enough for now. You may leave. When I find it convenient, I will send for you." At the same time, he was hoping that Paul would offer him a bribe, so he sent for him frequently and talked with him. When 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, but because Felix wanted to grant favor to the Jews, he left Paul in prison. So we see here that Governor Felix, he knew about the way. He knew about who Christ was and the followers of Christ. But he chose to delay his decision against the accusations. But he chose to delay that decision, a decision that would never come. Paul is placed under guard, but given some freedom so that he could people could visit him and care for his needs. But even though he was in prison, Paul was given many opportunities to be a witness to those who would listen. And he was a strong witness for those who would listen. In this case, those that were guarding Paul for those 2 years that he was in prison would have heard the message, would have heard the gospel. And he was a witness to those guards. And he also had several opportunities to witness to Governor Felix and his wife Drusilla several times. He was able to be a strong witness of the truth, and he spoke about faith in Christ Jesus, and he talked about, especially with Felix and Drusilla, I guess their background was kind of sketchy, but he's able to talk about Christ, and he's able to talk about righteousness and self-control and the judgment to come. And those were teachings that were hard for Felix to hear, to where he gets to the point of, "That's enough for now. You may leave. I'll call for you later. When it's convenient, I'll send for you," type of thing. But he continued to meet with Paul over those 2 years to hear the message, but also in hopes of receiving a bribe so that he could buy his way out of the situation that he was in. But again, because of Paul's blameless life, because of his living above reproach, it allowed him not to be swayed by the governor to buy his way out of the situation that he was in. And so it's important for us, as Paul did and the disciples, the apostles did, we need to live a life above reproach, a blameless life. If we do, it will benefit the message that we will be able to present. Our words won't be in contrast or in contradiction to the life that we live. So that'll give us, that will benefit that message that we have. And if we are living out the truth of the gospel and we are living above reproach, the message that we share will have more power, because people will see that the message we present is the message that we are living, and we are the proof of a change that comes through a life above reproach, blameless in the sight of God. And when our lives and our message align, when the way we live our life and the message that comes out of our mouth, when they align, our influence will be even greater to those that hear the message. And so I encourage all of us to live that blameless life, a life above reproach. Because when we do that, if we ever find ourselves in a situation like Paul, where the false accusations come, that we will be fearless. Because of the life that we live, we can be fearless in the face of those accusations, that false testimony. It'll give us confidence to know the life that we live is truth, and we can share that truth, knowing that There's nothing false within us. And it will give us strength to be the witness that God wants us to be as we live out our lives on this planet. So I encourage all of us, let's pursue a life lived above reproach, blameless before God and men, so that our lives and our words align to bring a powerful message of the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world that needs him. God bless. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.